Today, we're looking at a brown ink by Monteverde Scotch Brown. Scotchy, scotchy, scotch. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so that if you're in a hurry, you can skip around. But if you got the time, check out the entire video. Also, if you're interested, you can follow me over on Instagram. And if you're new here, I would invite you to subscribe. I do a new ink review daily. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put it into this Noodler's Nib Creeper, wrote with it for a day, and used it to take the notes for this video. In order to have some standardization while looking at writing samples, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper, although there are additional writing samples that occur much later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and some very nice shading. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with some no feather spread, halo sheen, still a very nice shading. 7 seconds to dry. You could tell I was so excited I was trying to get straight into the very nice shading there. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine and the stub with some very nice shading. No feather spread, halo sheen, but still very nice shading. Look at this. It is gorgeous writing. Horrible penmanship, but then the colors are nice. 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show plenty of color variation, and we get it in the writing samples. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It has a nice peppering of shading throughout. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, much nicer shading than going on in the stub, although the stub's not too bad. 9 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, same great shading as the extra fine. 14 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show good color variation left to right. Medium shows more than the extra fine, although we get great shading in the writing. And Rhodia. With no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. Look at that shading. Just wow. Extra fine is slightly lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, decent shading. It's a peppering of shading throughout here. Nowhere near as nice as we've seen with all of the other writings. 5 seconds to dry. Medium is a tad bit darker than the extra fine, tad bit lighter than the stub. With no feather spread, halo sheen, pretty decent peppering of shading throughout here. This definitely shows it. Look at what's going on in the word brown. Really just look at that word. Look at the word fox, the word lazy. It's very nice. 8 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine, far left to far right, and medium far left to far right do give some color variation, although it's better in the writing. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is this is very much a red leaning brown, and it pushes its way all the way up, fleeing from the water. But what is interesting is look all the way at the tip top, at that darkest area. And going from far right, you do not have to move in very far, and you see specks of a turquoise blue showing up across the top. And I believe it's that turquoise bit that is giving this ink its very nice shading as it writes. Now the one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water, and it looks exactly the same. So I'm not expecting water resistance, but if you wanted to find that same turquoise blue, if you went about almost halfway in from the right, on the right side of halfway, you do see a little bit of that turquoise poking out there, so that's quite interesting to me. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I would not use this in a note-taking situation if I wanted to go back and highlight, because there's quite a bit of blowout that is occurring on that G to H, and I'm just very risk averse. Now that's not a surprising result when you look at what happens with water, which is completely reactivating, breaking down, and lifting this ink up off the paper. Water is all that it took to get it out of my pen. Pen flush does nothing more than what water did, and the 1/3 bleach solution completely obliterates it from the page, but you're not going to need it. Again, it only took water from me to get this out of the pen. I test ink viscosity or flow by using a tilt test, and I'll link that somewhere here. And for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Put the data onto a bell curve or standard deviation for it to be easily understood. Monteverde's Scotch Brown has a viscosity of 1.71, making it a wet ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average all 6 of those numbers. Now, for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Monteverde's Scotch Brown has an average dry time of 9 seconds, making this a fast-drying ink. Instead of finding inks that look like Monteverde's Scotch Brown, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went for a nice green, and I chose Robert Oster's Forest Green. The second writing sample is done on Fabriano, Apica CD, and Nemesine paper. Here we're looking at Fabriano paper. Now it tends to really tone down what inks can do and tame a lot of things. It has no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It still has a very nice peppering of shading throughout. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, very strong peppering throughout this writing. It's not so much shading in and out, it's just that there's darker spots all over it. 5 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, same heavy peppering of shading all over with 7 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both far left to far right, don't show a lot of color variation, although it is there in the writing. Apica notebooks. With no bleeding, no ghosting. It's actually Apica CD notebooks. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, some decent shading throughout its writing. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, still some nice shading in this writing, 6 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine and the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, nice shading. 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both left to right do show some good color variation, and we do get it in the writing. And last up is Nemesine or Nemesine or that one. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, great shading, love this ink. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, great shading, 6 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, still fan-freaking-tastic shading, 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show good color variation. We get it all the way through almost all writing with all pens. And that is all that I have for writing samples. So what do I think of Monteverde's Scotch Brown? This is a solid performing brown ink with very consistent shading throughout a lot of its writing, and it looks fantastic on the page. But admittedly, I'm a fan of brown inks and Scotch. So if you have a good Scotch, send it my way. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? A very wet pen is going to put down a nice solid brown, but you're going to lose the shading that it can offer. Where a medium to dry flow pen is going to put down a great brown and have a lot of great shading. The choice is obvious. I'm going to remind you that I'm here every day with a new ink review. Thanks for watching.